G'day and welcome back to Critical AFL on YouTube, everyone. Today's video is the final instalment in our three-part series on West Coast Eagles to watch out for in 2025. Part 3 will cover new inclusions from both the draft and trade period. And as you may have noticed from the cover image, there were 9 players in total brought into the club across these two mechanisms. Because the series is specifically about players who will make 2025 a better team than before, not all 9 will feature in this video, but as always, we'd love to get your feedback in the comments if you've been tracking these guys and believe there's a dark horse tucked away in the pack. But before we get into that, if you've been following our articles or just came across this video and enjoy it, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Our presence on this platform is very new, so your support by just clicking that button will go a long way towards establishing ourselves here and being able to make more videos just like this one. So let's get into it. It'll probably come as no surprise that our number one new inclusion likely to impact the team in 2025 is Liam Baker. Baker came at a price that initially ruffled a few Eagle feathers amongst the fan base, but after an exceptional draft, I think it's safe to say that the West Coast recruiting team appear to have managed to have their cake and eat it too on this one. While we won't get bogged down in the finer details of that transaction in this video, we will focus on the talent that Baker is. Described by many as a hard-nosed forward midfielder hybrid, Baker has a reputation as a guy who doesn't like losing and only gets better when the going gets tough. And that's something West Coast has been heavily criticised for in their big losses over recent years. He's slick, tough and quite versatile, with his former line coach at Richmond and now head coach at the Eagles, Andrew McWalter, stating his intentions to play Baker off half-back in the coming year. A good option for a side where small forwards are the only division of the squad that isn't lacking. The fact that he pinch hits effectively in the midfield is also a cure for a lack of quality rotations that West Coast had last year, running through that midfield. So from pretty much any angle you look at it, Baker's looming as one of the most important players in our three-part series to watch out for in 2025. For me, it's still a coin flip between him and Elijah Hewitt, but I'm going to have to go with Elijah Hewitt just on sentimental reasons, because it's always exciting when a draftee steps up. Number 2 on this list is also another purchase from Richmond's liquidation sale earlier in the year, and that's Jack Graham. Graham's a solid and reliable midfield forward hybrid who, although decent, probably makes his way higher up the list purely on positional need. Over the last few years, West Coast have really felt the loss of the physical supporting inside midfielder. I think pretty much ever since Jack Redden's unexpected retirement in 2022, which was a few years earlier than I think anyone would have expected. And it was based on injury and just the condition his body was in. Redden was actually a bit of an unsung hero who a lot of people, if you spoke to them, viewed him as a barometer for the side, meaning if he had a good game, so did everyone. Since then, the West Coast midfielders lack that working class physicality and distribution from the inside. Elliot Yeo's also excellent at it, but he's also the guy who's supposed to carry and run the ball out as well. So you've kind of got him doing two jobs there, which is why it really is hard for him to be that barometer player, which is a term that I'm probably going to use a lot when it comes to guys like this. Also, since Redden's retirement, Yeo's really been off the park, in and out, for the most part, right up until 2024, where he managed to find his fitness again on the back of that Qatar program. And at that point, Luke Shuey had just retired the year before, so the depth wasn't there. And West Coast really haven't had that same safe structure that we had ever since Redden left. Jack Graham possesses all of those missing traits, and he does bring his nickname Fridge across with him, bringing a little bit of insight into the type of player that he will be, which is the guy that will hopefully bring that midfield of future champions into the team, whether it's young guys or the older guys that just need a little bit of support or just someone doing a bit more grunt work for them. These are the unsung heroes, really, that keep teams grinding forward against tough opposition. So while it does look like West Coast has tried to bring a couple of guys in like Clay Hall and Luca Grego in to play this role long term, Jack Graham should be the plug-and-play solution to what's been missing since Jack Redden retired. Number 3 on our list of impactful new inclusions is Bo Allen. Bo is the other piece in the puzzle of West Coast sliding back from pick 3 for Liam Baker. So essentially, they were the two headliners we got for pick 3, along with Matt Owies, who also came with that deal. And technically, you could also say, I think it was Tom Gross that was picked up when we slid yet another place with Port Adelaide in quite a clever little draft manipulation. For anyone that followed the draft night, Allen's pickup at pick 16 in the end was quite a tense watch during the national draft because in the lead up, there wasn't a single draft board in the final month beforehand that had him sliding back to West Coast's new pick. Fans of Allen can probably thank Richmond, Melbourne, and St Kilda having multiple picks at the top of the first round for his slide, as they all chose to diversify their additional picks rather than grabbing that elite midfielder that most clubs do when they've got one in the first round. So, long story short, West Coast did very well to still get Allen where they did. Now to Bo's expected contribution in 2025. It would be surprising to see him take the waffle by storm for a while, with such a competitive first 23 list at the moment. But it also wouldn't be surprising to see him appear at halfback at some point and then just make himself undroppable from there. Similar to what we said about Clay Hall in part one of this series, the squeeze for midfield spots may limit his opportunity in there. But for me personally, that's where I'm hoping he ends up long term. Allen's a powerful player who also possesses surprising agility and has great ball smarts on the inside of stoppages. And I think it would be a real treat for fans to see him rotate through that midfield off halfback. And again, put in a few surprising moments in there to let everybody know where his career and the next generation of West Coast midfielders are headed. Number 4 on this list, we've got another draftee inclusion in Job Shanahan. Job actually jumped his way onto this list on the back of some very concerning news about Harry Edwards over the last week. Edwards, the heir to Tom Barrass's vacancy at the key back position, and one of our top emerging Eagles predicted in part 1 of this series, was listed in West Coast's pre-Christmas injury update with bone stress identified in his foot that has landed him in a moon boot over the Christmas period. Now, while this was described by West Coast head of football John Worsfold as precautionary and short-term, Edwards has had a horror run with injuries, particularly bone breaks and fractures. So the update does raise some concern. Shanahan's place in all this could actually carry a lot of intrigue for West Coast fans. It's a little silver lining, because drafted at pick 30 in what many observers considered to be an absolute steal, he's listed as a key forward who's also a potential key back. And he's already a developed body if he were to be thrown into the deep end in 2025. What I find most intriguing for Shanahan is that throughout his draft year, his set shot accuracy was raved about across the recruitment pool, which really detracted any conversation about his ability as a key defender. A really good comparison fans may remember was Oscar Allen when he got his debut against GWS. He played a near perfect game in defence and could have easily been a long-term asset down there if the club didn't see it as too much of a wasted opportunity not having him in the front of goals up forward. Something about Shanahan speaks to very similar potential, so don't be surprised if at some point in 2025 the club finds themselves leaning on Shanahan as an unlikely hero in defence. And number 5 new inclusion to watch in 2025 is Matt Owies. The pickup of Owies across the trade period has a real middle child syndrome ring to it. He was packaged up in the pick slide for Liam Baker and was treated as a bit of an afterthought in general after Carlton didn't offer him a new contract, which was really no reflection of Owies' ability and more their broader list and contract strain in general. So now at West Coast, Owies has joined one of the most competitive lines at the club, and the positive news is that despite all of that, he really should be a starting 23 player who improves that forward line even further. Owies managed 33 goals as a small forward in a squad that structured their inside 50s exclusively around their twin towers, Kerno and Mackay, which is really impressive. On top of that, he's a great pressure forward who loves the physicality and runs up and down the field seeking it. So while he may not be in any of the rock star categories of our series, don't forget to watch out for Matt Owies in 2025. That wraps up our list of new inclusions to watch out for in 2025. Let us know if you feel any of the unmentioned draftees are your dark horses to come into the AFL in a big way, or if you'd like to see a video of our waffle expectations next year. But before we wrap up this video, however, it's time to draw our conclusions on all of the players to watch in 2025 that we have listed in this series and how they stack up against any points of decline. So by points of decline, we're really referring to players that have departed or maybe aging. A quick summary of some of the players who have left or maybe getting a little past it. West Coast lost 3 senior players in Andrew Gaff, Jack Darling and Tom Barrass. Both Gaff and Darling were very much playing at the end of their careers last year, so the impact of losing them really shouldn't be felt comparing the list to the season just gone. Pretty much the same goes for all of our off-season delistings. I think that mechanism pretty much speaks for itself when you're measuring the impact of losing them. So what that leaves on the departures front is Tom Barrass. There's definitely no denying that Barrass is an elite key defender, and while West Coast probably cashed in on Barrass while he still held really good genuine value, there will be a need for that hole to be filled. Personally, I don't think the loss is likely to be felt unless the remaining key defence players have injuries, which is also quite realistic. As we just heard earlier in this video, Harry Edwards was reported to be in a moon boot in the past week, while Jeremy McGovern has not only had his challenges with injuries, but he'll also be 33 next year, making him one of our older players on the list. If these two starting players are out, the club is likely to fall back on Cal Jamison, Rhett Bazzo, Job Shanahan, and potentially even Sandy Brock, who's just a train-on player with West Coast chasing a list spot over summer. The other part of our negative assessment is West Coast's ageing players. Pretty much that would be the counterbalance to our emerging players, really. And there shouldn't be too many of them. Jeremy McGovern, as we mentioned, Jamie Cripps and Dom Sheed are all in that bracket. And out of them, McGovern's the most irreplaceable. Cripps has become a mentor to a really deep part of our list in the small forward division. Sheed is quite likely already in the fringe in that new look West Coast midfield. And while Tim Kelly and Elliot Yeo are both moving towards the other side of their peak, it would be premature to put them in this category for 2025. So in full summary, going into 2025, across the three field zones, West Coast is looking its strongest in years. The forward line could quite reasonably be argued as up there with the best in the competition. The midfield has added desperately needed depth and probably comes with a bit of a wild card next to it in 2025. That mix of young and new talent, along with senior stars, still fit and ready, could easily surprise the competition and will hopefully be on even footing for first access at stoppages with a fit Matt Flynn. In the back line, while the first choice squad looks competitive, it's particularly vulnerable if there were to be a couple of injuries, but at the same time, it could offer fans the opportunity at seeing someone new step up and hold down that line, much like we saw with Jeremy McGovern when he came out of nowhere in 2015, when Mitch Brown and Eric McKenzie were both out. So all in all, 2025 should excite West Coast fans who have suffered quite loyally through a rare rough patch. Let us know what has you most excited for next year and what your expectations are for the club. Thanks again, and as always, if you're enjoying our content on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We will be producing lots more off-season content for you to enjoy, and subscribing will not only keep you from missing any of it, it will also help us continue producing it for you. So tap that button to make sure we see you in our next video.